Okay, welcome back. We're going to pick up where we left off. Now we're going to be solving for the missing amount, indicated usually by an X in each diagram, in each of these triangles using our SOHCAHTOA formulas. All right, so we have to determine the length of X in each triangle, and we have to round our answer to one decimal place when we're done. And we have to also write how much the other angle is supposed to be. So let's just do the other angle first. So first of all, let's label this triangle. This triangle is not even called anything. So let's call this D, E, and F. So this is triangle DEF. I just picked those letters. Notice that again I used capitals because they're vertices. So angle F is the 90 degrees. So across from it, we automatically know this is the hypotenuse. And I'll just call it HYP for short. We also know this 15 degrees, which is sitting in corner E or vertex E, which means angle D must be the leftover from 180 because we know the angle sum of any triangle, any type of triangle, is equal to 180 degrees. So 180 minus the two numbers that we know is going to give us 75 degrees. So we know that angle D is 75. That's done. Now we got to solve for X. Well, X in relation to the 15, again, we never use the 90. The 90 is useless to us. The other angle we know is 15. That's how we name the X side. The X side is next to the 15. So that's called adjacent. Notice the hypotenuse, not important. The opposite is not important in this question. Only adjacent and hypotenuse. So what does that look like now? We have adjacent and hypotenuse participating. So you go to your formulas. The one that utilizes adjacent and hypotenuse but doesn't use opposite, these two have opposite in it. We don't need that. The one that has the adjacent and hypotenuse in it is cos. So this is a cos question. So cos theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Then we fill in our numbers. Cos is always just cos. Theta in this case, our angle was 15 degrees. The adjacent side is x, and the hypotenuse was 8.4. Notice I didn't put the centimeters into the formula because that just makes it look even more complex and messy. So what we need to do is we need to now bring up, just like we did over in question 1, and solve for x. X is on top, so that's pretty easy. So what's going to happen is the 8.4 just needs to come up and times with the cos 15 that was already there, and that's going to give us x by himself. You could also write it with brackets if you prefer not to use the times symbol. And that means the exact same thing. So in your calculator, go cos 15 times 8.4. 8.1 is our answer to one decimal place. Notice again, this side needs to be shorter than this side. 8.1 is smaller than 8.4, so that could work because we know the hypotenuse needs to be the longest side. The second question over here, again, triangle has no names. So P, Q, R. Again, capital letters always. What we need to do is we need to figure out what we're given. Well, we're given 42 degrees. So that means angle P must be 180 minus the 90 minus the 42. And how much do you get there? Look at that, 48 degrees. So angle P is 48 degrees. Done. Now we need to solve for x. Again, x happens to be on the longest side. The x is actually on the hypotenuse side. The only other number I know is this 8.2 number, and that's across the triangle from the 42. So he's across on the opposite side from the 42 because that's our reference point. We don't care about this one right now. Why use that when we were given this one? And the 90 is never used. So what has opposite and hypotenuse in it? Sine, cos, or tan. That's right, it's sine. So sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. Fill in what you know. Sine is always going to stay. Don't drop it. 42 degrees, we know. The opposite is the 8.2 number. I'm not writing the kilometers. And the hypotenuse is the x number. Now, x now is on the bottom. So you just saw from before that in order for us to solve for x, the x needs to come up and the sine 42 goes down. So I'll just continue over here. The x comes up, the 8.2 doesn't go anywhere, and underneath it will sit the sine 42. So you pick up your calculator, you go 8.2, and you divide by sine 42. And then you press equals. 12.25. So this 2 is going to change to a 3 because that 5 is going to round him up. So 12.3 is our answer. And this would be kilometers. I guess this one would have been centimeters. All right, let's see what's on the back of the next page. Oh, we got 2 more. Again, no labels. So let's figure this out. So again, you can go back to ABC if you want and label your triangle. So what we have here is we have 24 degrees, a 12, and an X. Angle A is missing, so angle A is going to be, again, 180. Take away the 90, take away the 24. What's that? 70, 66 degrees. What else do we need to find? We need to find X. Now, X is across the triangle from the 24. So we would consider him opposite. The 12 is next to, so we would consider that adjacent. What has opposite and adjacent in it? Well, that would be tan. So tan theta is worth opposite divided by adjacent. The hypotenuse is not important in this question. So when we fill in what we know, tan stays in the formula. Theta is 24. The opposite is x, and the adjacent is 12. This time the x is on top. So to solve for x, you just kick up the 12 and you times. 12 tan 24 equals x. Notice I didn't even put a times symbol there. You don't need it. That's understood to be times. So you can if you want. So if you like it like this, then you write it like this. These mean the exact same thing, right? Up against each other means times. So in my calculator, I'm going to go tan 24 times 12. Some of you are going to do 12 tan 24. And again, you get a 5.3 number. Check your diagram. Can this answer be 5.3? Well, we don't really know because we don't know the hypotenuse. We just know that this number happens to be 5 and this number is 12. Yeah, that could work because it's a very small degree. So this side should be a lot shorter than this side. All right, let's do x, y, z over here. Well, actually, I'll make this side the y, and this side the x, and this side the z. And the reason why I changed that is because if this is capital X, it makes sense that this would be lowercase x because he's across the triangle from capital X. So triangle XYZ, angle X. So we do the little angle symbol, right, when we're looking for an angle. So that's the little symbol you see in front of the capital A or in front of the X. 180 minus the 90 minus the 25, which would give me 65 degrees. The x happens to be on the adjacent side, and the 14 happens to be on the opposite side. Again, hypotenuse is not important, so this must be a tan question. Tan 25 is equal to 14 over x. Bring up the x, bring down the tan 25 because we don't like x in the bottom. So that means x sitting by itself is going to be 14 divided by tan 25. So that's me continuing the question up there. 14 divided by tan 25 gives you 30.0. All right, that's our answer, 30.0. All right, so now solve the triangle. When you're being asked to solve a triangle, what you're being asked to do is to find everything that is missing in the diagram. So there's always going to be 3 things missing. So in this diagram of ABC, that means we're missing this side and we're missing this side, but we're also missing this angle. So there's 3 parts missing. So the order you find them in is totally up to you. So let's find angle B first. So for angle B, dot, dot. So now I'm telling the reader what it is I'm aiming to get. So they know what I'm doing. Angle B equals 180. Take away the 90, take away the 32. So what's that? 58. So angle B is done. Next, again, the next thing you solve for, we have little a that's missing, and we have this side called x, which I'm going to change to little c because he's opposite big C. Doesn't matter which one you get. So why don't we go for little a? For little a, dot, dot. Little a is called opposite. The only other number you know is the 120, and that's the adjacent. So this is going to be an opposite and adjacent question, which would then be tan. That has opposite and adjacent in it. So tan 32 is equal to a on top of 120. Kick up the 120 in times. You can put the time symbol or not. Pick up your calculator. Tan 32 equals times 120 equals 74.98. 74.98. So that would be a 75.0 answer when we round properly, right? So 74.984322223. That's what your calculator said. So this 8 causes this 9 to round up to a 10, which makes you carry the 1 over, and that becomes 75.0. Now for part 3, which is for little c, we have some options. We can pretend we don't know this and just go back and use the 120 and the 32 degrees and c is the hypotenuse. So that would be a cos question. The benefit of doing that is that we're not dependent on this answer. What if we got this answer wrong? I don't know if I want to use it in my next calculation if I don't have to. So you're usually better off going back to the original question numbers and just basing your next answer on those. So adjacent, 120, hypotenuse. Adjacent hypotenuse is cos. So cos theta is adjacent over hypotenuse. Cos 32 is 120 over c. We don't like the unknown on the bottom. He comes up. The cos 32 goes down. 120 divided by cos 32. 120 divided by cos 32 is 141.5. Okay. Now, seems like a big number, but remember, this is the hypotenuse. It's supposed to be a big number. It's supposed to be the biggest number, so it definitely is bigger than 120, so that makes sense. Now, we could have also used Pythag. So Pythagorean theorem would have been 120 squared plus this small side squared. So let's call it 75. We're not going to be accurate because we rounded right here. Equals little c squared, right? The hypotenuse squared. So when you square this and add it to the square of that, 120 squared plus 75 squared, we get 20,025, but then you got to square root that number. We get 141, right? 0.5. Well, look at that, 141.5, 141.5. So just showing you that we get the same answer. Once we know two sides of a triangle, and it's a right triangle, we can use Pythagorean theorem to find the third missing side. So that's also available to you. All right, last question. We're going to determine x and y, and then we're going to round our answers to one decimal place. All right, so here we go. So we have to find x and y, but we need to find one before the other. So in the first diagram, which again, nothing is labeled, so anytime we have vertices unlabeled, let's label them. We have to find y first. And the reason why we have to find y first is because he's the shared side between the two triangles. We can't get x because we don't know enough information over here. So we need to get y first. So for little y, dot, dot. Y is opposite, the 8 is adjacent. This is a tan question. Tan 46 is y over 8. Kick up the 8 times tan 46. Now, because I'm going to need this answer later, you get this big long number. you need everything. So don't call that 8.3 just yet. 8.2842421. Because this number is going to be used now to help me get x. So for x, dot, dot, x is adjacent, but now I know the opposite. So opposite is this 8.28 number. The adjacent is what I'm looking for. Opposite and adjacent in the question. Hypotenuse not important. This is again a tan formula. So tan 35 is equal to y over x. We know the y number from before. X is going to come up. Y is going to stay where he is. Tan is going to go underneath. You can fill in the 8.2842421 number over tan 31, and you'll get your answer. Notice it's still in my calculator. I did not clear my calculator. That's always a good habit when you're doing trig because you'll probably need that number for something else. So 8.2842421 divided by tan 31. 13.78, so 13.8. So therefore, x equals 13.8 and y meters, and y equals 8.3 meters. And we're done. So you're going to find your homework in the practice section under 2.1. So the worksheet, so it's a different booklet, the second booklet, and it's going to be questions pertaining to what we just did. So it's 1 page, 2 pages. So up to the end of 12 with the answers being right there is what you should do in order to prepare yourself for moving forward. All right, so again, sides and right triangles, WS worksheets 2.1, and it's in the practice folder. All right, let me know if you have any questions.